During the First World War, over 12,000 ships from all nations were sunk around the British Isles. That's more than 200 every single month. Although British vessels made up most of those losses, German, French, American, Norwegian, Dutch, ships from dozens of countries were sunk in these waters. World War II added thousands more. British, Allied, Axis, over 5,000 extra vessels went to the seabed around our coast. But here's what most people don't realise. Large numbers of these wrecks have never been properly identified. Why? Well, incomplete wartime records, civilian vessels that went down without witnesses, colliers and merchant ships that simply vanished. They're all down there waiting to be discovered. Off the south coast of the UK alone, there's over 1,100 documented World War I wrecks, and many of those carry no name. Today we're diving one of them. A collier, almost certainly World War I era, lying in 95 metres of water. Conditions are perfect, with stunning underwater visibility. But will we solve the mystery? What we're hoping to do is to recover an artefact that might finally give this wreck its name. A ship's bell with an engraved name, crockery with a company marking, or a builder's plate from the engine room. Something that can connect this rusting, broken hull to a specific vessel lost over a century ago. Let's find out if we do it. Here we are, July 2025. 40 miles out to sea, on board diver support vessel Seeker, operated by In Deep. I do a load of stuff with them. As you can see, the two divers about to get in the water there. They've got the lazy shot. You can see Liz just to the right hand side there. She's kind of feeding the rope out. What this means is that two divers have already gone down and are on the wreck. They've sent up the pill or the pellet to say that the shot line is on the wreck. Once we get that, the next pair of divers go in with a lazy shot and make sure that's all set up for the decompression. And then once they're in and that's looking good, the remaining divers on the boat get to go in. Clearly today I'm part of the remaining divers. Now, for a variety of reasons, there was only 6 divers on this trip. So myself and my buddy were divers 5 and 6. You can see there Liz, she's getting everything ready. She's going to help me get my scooter on. There's a couple of good reasons to have a scooter. There's the obvious one, which is when you're on a wreck, it's quite nice. It reduces the effort. You can kind of moat around. Also, it's got my GoPro on. It's got a pair of video lights on. That's all handy. But one of the main reasons I like it is because it allows me to get down really quickly. There's 2 reasons why that's a good thing. The first is that you're not incurring decompression when you're just travelling down the line. The second thing is that it allows you to get onto the wreck quickly. Now, there's a certain element of competition in this kind of diving. Everybody wants to find the thing that's going to help us to identify the wreck. And clearly the people who arrive on the wreck first, they get an advantage because they're going to be there before anyone else. And if there's anything really obvious, they will find it. So that's why what we do is we rotate who gets to go in first. I'd been in first on another dive, but on this one, it was my turn to be in last. That doesn't stop me though from trying to get down as quickly as possible, and hopefully that will minimise the time that people who were already down there will have had to find exciting underwater artefacts that allow it to be identified, and increase the chance that I get there and I get them. And as the more astute of you have already seen at the beginning of this video, I show you me finding the bell on this dive. So you've got that all to look forward to. You've just seen me sorting out my scooter, getting my GoPro turned on, and this is me. I've probably dropped about another 20 metres, a little bit of a time hop there, and you can see they're just coming up onto the lazy shot, which was put in by the 2 divers that we saw exiting the boat. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is sticking my tag on the lazy shot there along with all the others, and then when I come up, obviously I'll be releasing it, and the last pair up, which is probably going to be me and my buddy, we will release the lazy shot and we'll float in the current. Pretty much standard procedure, and anybody who's watched any of my other videos will have seen this happen any number of times. Now, I know people always like to know where I am, where this dive is taking place. So here's a bit of a Google Earth shot. The boat has been moved from Plymouth to Newlyn. Newlyn is the most westerly fishing port on the south coast of England. And from there, we've travelled 40 miles out to sea into an area where there are just loads and loads of undived wrecks. Question you might ask is, how do we know they're undived? And the reason is because we've got quite a good corporate memory in our team, and we know the other teams that either might have dived out of here or the boats that have operated out of here. And what we know about them means that we know nobody else has been onto this wreck. It's just too far out and too deep for anybody else to have done. So that's always a lovely feeling when you're going down. And as you can see here, I'm just starting to see the strobes, which means I'm getting close to the bottom. And I know it's an undived wreck, well, apart from the 4 people who are in front of me. And as you can see there, I've got my strobes ready in my left hand. So clearly time is of the essence. I'm going to get them onto the shot line as quickly as I can. You can also see that I've managed to catch up the 2 divers who put the lazy shot on. One of them's just to the left by the strobes and the other one is on the bottom there. So I'm particularly pleased about that. It means that only the first 2 divers on the wreck have been there in front of me. And effectively, it's now I'm competing on even terms with divers number 3 and 4. I'm particularly swift with getting my strobes on today, particularly smooth, so that's good. What I've also realised is that the bow is where that diver is heading in front of me on the left-hand side. I've got the scooter, so I'm going to beat him there. And as you can see, conditions down here are absolutely wonderful. It's always difficult to put a number on on visibility, but this had to be at least 20 metres. And it's one of the great things about diving in the middle of the English Channel is that's what you get. Well, that's what you get sometimes. It's certainly what we've got today, which is brilliant. And as you can see here, I'm actually having a look off the side of the wreck. I know any number of people who've found bells off the side. I'm basically at the bow now. We knew before we went down that this wreck was about 100 metres long. That was the information on the UK Hydrographic Survey. As soon as I've got down, I've seen that it's full of coal. So that's kind of managed my expectations for this dive. I know that other people will have been to the bow. The first pair of divers rather, will have been to the bow. So therefore, I'm kind of, if it was lying right in the middle of the bow, I'm pretty certain they would have found it. That's why I'm going straight to have a look over the edge. The thing with a dive of this depth, obviously, is that your time is really limited. You can see I've only just got to the bottom. I'm already up to 26 minutes time to surface. So that's the TTS number down in the bottom right of my computer that you can see the overlay on the left-hand side. Thanks, Eric, for doing that. What else can we see on this wreck? Well, there looks as though there might have been an anchor off to the left-hand side, but I'm ignoring that. Not really interested in anchors. What I'm hoping is that I'll be able to find something that will crack the identity. As you can see there, what I found is a bit of broken plate. Now, I don't know why I don't bring that up. I should do. It's one of the lessons I thought I'd learn ever since they identified the nonce, but clearly I didn't learn it. There might have been something on that. I actually find some plates later on and I look at all of them and there's nothing on them. So Crockery's not going to help us identify this wreck. You can see that other diver who I got down with, he's in the bow as well. In front of us there, that looks like a winch, the thing that's covered in nets. So that would have no doubt been for lifting up the anchor. So having a good look round here. I haven't seen anything off the side on the seabed, so I'm just having a look in the middle. You know, perhaps the divers in front of me missed something. As you're going to see, they didn't miss anything here. What they missed was later on, and you're going to have to hang on in there for that moment to happen. But first of all, as you can see, we're looking through the wreck. Now, one of the things about colliers is they tend to stay quite intact. There's some bad things about colliers, which is the fact that they're normally really cheaply built ships. Nobody's spending any money on a collier. Oh, there you go. There you can see the big old anchor there. That's just lying in the middle of the ship, so it can't have been hanging off the side of it. Perhaps that was a spare one. So colliers, yeah, really cheaply built ships. But the good thing about them is that they stay intact. so the holds are full of coal, and that protects the shape of the wreck. Now this is interesting. You can probably just see on the left hand side there I've spotted something, and I'm scratching it with my torch there to see what it's made out of, and that kind of looked a bit bell-shaped to me. I don't think it is the bell. I asked other people about it when we got up, and everybody agreed that they didn't think it was the bell either. Sometimes bells were made of iron on really cheap ships. Everyone thinks bells are made of brass. They've got their name on. That's not always the case. The Germans in particular often had lots of iron bells. So I'm scratching this one, and it's clearly made of iron. So there's no point bringing it up, because this is obviously an old ship and will have been down for a long period of time, and therefore anything iron like that, the seawater will have got in and corroded it, and if you were to bring it up, it would have just fallen to bits. So that's not anything particularly interesting. And I guess if there was anything really obvious and really interesting, the first pair of divers who've been down on this wreck for a good, 7 minutes or so before me, if it was really obvious, they would probably have found it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just having a good look underneath things, hoping that somewhere down here there is something a little less obvious that they've missed that I'm going to find. I mean, there's that bell again. I'm just having a quick look at it. You can see I'm calling it a bell. Not sure it is a bell. Just seeing the anchor again there, so you can see, right, still up the bow, but I think I've decided that I've had enough of looking around the bow, and therefore I'm going to move off. You can see there off to my right hand side, that is actually the port side of the wreck, and as I've mentioned, it's standing up pretty well. And that's because the whole wreck has been, as I've mentioned already, been supported by all this coal, which just keeps colliers intact for far longer than pretty much all other wrecks. It does mean the downside is that you get really excited before you go down, because you see them on the sounder. They look really good, and you get down there and it's like, oh yes, collier full of coal. You've probably just seen there's a diver just gone past me on the left. There's a kind of some sort of deck winch off to my right hand side. Once again, having a good look around in here, and interestingly enough, the bell, when I find it, is just to the right of where I am now. You can see there that there's a load of divers in and around this area. Remember that yellow rope? You can just see it off to my right hand side. Probably some sort of discarded fishing gear or whatever, but that's where the bell is. So there's a whole load of divers have been down here. It's really close to the shot. There's a load. This is the bridge area where you'd expect to find the bridge bell. You can see there's a load of portholes. There's various other bits and pieces. There's a kind of iron helm. There's an iron binnacle. That's what the other divers are currently having a look at. But so there's this is where the majority of divers spend the majority of the time, and none of them find the bell. And I have to say, when stuff like that happens, it makes you feel really good. Makes me feel really good anyway. Just off to my left hand side there, that big thing that was standing up tall was a donkey boiler. The main boiler was off to the left hand side as well. So there's all that rope. You can see divers all over the place, and just as we're looking at it now, the bell is just to the left hand side. I'm having a quick look off to the right onto the seabed, and I'll come back and look there later on, because there's actually various bits of crockery and stuff off there. But now you see I'm still heading on the port side, heading towards the stern. You can see it's collapsed quite a lot here, and that's, I would say, probably because there isn't this is the middle of the ship. This is where the engine is. This is where the boiler is. What that means is it doesn't have the protection that the coal gives it. Now there's the engine up in front of me. It's an old 2-cylinder compound engine, and that's another good indication that this ship is quite old, World War One era, possibly before, but I mean, chances are this was something sunk during the First World War, but we don't know for certain until we actually manage to identify it. You can see here, this is the start of the prop shaft. There it is. You can see it's actually quite a thin prop shaft in that prop tunnel. So once again, that shows that it's an old ship, because the prop shaft isn't big and thick. The reason it's not big and thick is because it's fairly low power. Oh, there's a spare prop there. You can see that's clearly iron. You see it's all fuzzy and furry around the edges. So instantly you can tell that's iron, and therefore of no value. It'll be corroded away. And here we are. We're at the stern. You can see there's some bollards that have collapsed down there. The stern stands, reasonably upright. It's still intact. It hasn't quite collapsed yet. Once again, a few more bollards down to the side there. This is the port side. I'm just going to go off the back. I'm going to have a look at the prop. I don't know why. I always like having a good look at a prop, but you can see there's loads of stuff hanging off this wreck, loads of rope, loads of nets. Interestingly enough, I'm the only diver who comes to the prop. You can see there's the rudder off to the port side there. I'm going to go around the other side and have a look at the prop in a minute, but potentially that would give some sort of clue to the sinking, although the prop could have just collapsed and ended up in that when it hit the seabed. There's a prop, old 4-bladed prop. We've already seen the spare one, and there you can see the stern still standing up right there. So this actually wreck is pretty intact by the standards of something that's been underwater for 100 odd years and probably suffered quite a traumatic event during the sinking. So you would imagine it was either torpedoed or shelled by gunfire, or the other thing the Germans did, if it was a World War I casualties, they came aboard and put charges in the bottom of the ship once they allowed all the crew to get off. So whatever it was, pretty traumatic anyway. This is me going up. You see there's another porthole under there. So if you want a porthole, these aren't particularly great ones. They're all iron backed. So the front of it would be brass, the back of it would be iron, which means they're not particularly lovely if you were to bring them up. There's the steering quadrants. So that's obviously, you can see that's collapsed, and that may explain why the rudder's the angle that it is. So you can see I've come up here. I'm on the top of the stern, having a good look round. I'm not really sure why. I mean, most people don't bother going to the stern unless the rest of the wreck's not very interesting. I always quite like to do it because I like to get the whole wreck in. I like to make sure that I've seen everything. I will never go back to this wreck again. But at least I can say that I've seen it all. There's the prop shaft. Starboard side of the wreck is off to my right hand side. You can see there's no coal really in this part of the wreck, or if there has, it's spilled out onto the seabed off to the side, where it's collapsed. Perhaps this explains how it was sunk. Maybe the torpedo hit in the back of the wreck, and the coal or the cargo or whatever fell out on the way down. Maybe it wasn't carrying coal in the stern. Who knows. What I'm doing now, though, is I went to the stern down the port side. I'm coming back to the engine area up on the starboard side, and you can see there's the engine just coming up in front of me there. As I say, 2-cylinder engine, older style of engine. You can see I'm doing a bit of videoing it there with the GoPro. Meanwhile, I'm having a look. Perhaps there's a maker's plate in here. Obviously, other divers have been here. You can probably see in front of me there is the engine telegraph, which is another steel item. So once again, good indication that this was really cheaply made. So one of the other divers has found the telegraph, has pulled it out. It's fallen apart, and they've left it there. So once again, that's not going to provide any clues. There we go. There's the donkey boiler, the vertical one, and to the left of it is a standard kind of Scotch boiler, round. So this ship had a single smallish boiler really, and that steam engine that we've already seen, the 2-cylinder one. So those are really, along with the dimensions, the only clue, and the fact that it's carrying coal and the fact that it's quite old. Those are the only clues that we've got. Unfortunately, they're not the kind of clues that are going to allow you to identify it, because there are hundreds, possibly thousands of wrecks of matching this kind of description that was sunk in this kind of era. So what we need is something more solid than that, and that's where you come into the major ticket items. You want a bell with a name, you want a maker's plate, you want something like Crockery, which can also be really helpful. Anything like that would be good. But as you can see here, I've just come back onto the wreck again. This is the bridge area again. You can see all those portholes, all those other bits and pieces around here. So this is the area that everybody has been scouring. Everyone is looking for the clue. There's the vertical donkey boiler. There's somebody else. There's a yellow rope. We're going to see more of that in a moment. But most of the other divers by this point have left the wreck, or certainly are about to leave the wreck. And the reason is, you can probably see from my dive computer there, I've been down 16 minutes. My TTS there is up to 100 minutes, so it's going to be 2 hours very, very shortly. So my time on the wreck is ebbing fast. And that's the reality of these kind of things. When you're diving at this depth, you just have to try and maximize your time as much as you can, try and achieve whatever you can. And that's what I've done. You see, I've been all over the wreck. I've been to the bow, I've been to the stern. Somebody has found something there. I think possibly a plate or a bit of, in fact, I think it's a window. It's a porthole window. So, you know, this area here, this is where almost certainly the clue is going to be, you know, in and around the bridge area. There's got to be something. And what you can see off the side there is I have spotted that there's some crockery. You can see there's bits of broken plate there. There's also loads of coal as well. So I guess what I'm hoping is that I'm going to be able to get down here and find a plate with something on. And there we go. That does look as though it might be one until I pull it out and I realise actually it's just a fragment. Not only that, it's a fragment without anything on. So not only was a ship cheaply made, but they didn't invest very much in the crockery either. So if I could go back in time to the people who own this ship and said, come on guys, do us a favour, you know, give us something to work with there. I'm sure they would say, you know, sod off. Frankly, your concerns are no concern of ours. Clearly, the reason this ship was built the way it was because it was about saving money, and you know, like everyone else, I've got to deal with the economic situation. But there you go. So I'm off the port side here. I'm having a look around, you know, hoping that there might be another plate, another bit of crockery. Looks as though I've found something here. I'm going to pull it out and have a quick look at it. Once again, it's another fragment of plate without anything on it. I'm surprised I didn't bring these up, but I think it's probably difficult to see on this video but it must have been possible to see underwater that there was nothing on it. The plates look quite clean. They aren't heavily encrusted or anything like that. So here's this yellow rope. You can see I'm just coming back up onto the wreck now. I've got 2 hours of deco and I'm just thinking, right, my dive is pretty much done here. And that is when I suddenly spot something. And you can see there's a porthole underneath that bit of yellow rope. And I've just seen a glint of brass there. And there you go. That is the moment I pull out the bell. And frankly, that is a brilliant feeling. I'm 98 meters down. I was the last diver down, and I am the person who's found the bell, which is just absolutely unbelievable. So the only thing that remains to be done is to get it in a bag, because that's going to be coming up with me. And I'm pretty convinced at this point. I mean, I'm absolutely buzzing. I'm convinced that I've solved the mystery. I believe that when I get to the surface, we're going to have a look at what's written on the bell, and then all of a sudden we will know the name of this ship and it will no longer be a mystery. And that feeling of solving something like that, I mean, it's an incredible moment. And the fact that I believe that I've done it underwater and it's not going to take any additional research or anything like that, you know, I'm just super pleased about that. First things first, there's a small matter of getting back up to the surface. I'm obviously nearly 100 meters down. I've been down here quite a long time. The good news is I'm really close to the shot line, and there it is. You can see actually mine are the only strobes left on it. So the diver who came in with me has already gone. So I don't want to be messing around. I am here alone on a wreck by myself, and I guess that's because I was just heading back to the shot when I found the bell. So, but hey, you know what? That's a kind of exchange I'm very pleased with. Additional deco for finding a bell, yeah, absolute winner. And you can see here I'm motoring up, really going for it, using the scooter to kind of get up as shallow as I can, as quickly as I can. I'm willing to accept that my computer is going to give me some ascent rate indicators or ascent rate alarms. You can see there it's burning red. You can see fast ascent just popped up on my shear water. And those who've seen my videos will know this is something I often do, which is I get up as quickly as I can, normally to about half the distance from the bottom to my first decompression stop. The relative pressure change is not as significant there as it is in shallower. So therefore, my view is that it's not as risky. But that's my decision. You need to make your own. You can see I've skipped forward. I'm a lot shallower now, and the reason is that we're just coming up to the lazy shot, and there it is. You can see a single solitary tag left on it. That's mine. You can also see it's quite tight as well, so it's probably a sign that the current is picking up. Now you can see here that I am trying to pull it and it's not working. not only is it not working, I've got a bit concerned I'm going to puncture my dry glove there on that fairly rubbish clip. So you can see it's not in very well. You can see it's really taut. I need to try and maybe loosen it so I can pull it and get it off. And it's just, frankly, it's not having it. There you go. I'm going to try and use the string to avoid me getting punctured. And once again, it's still not having any of it. So that calls for plan B, and plan B is to cut the plan B is to cut the prusik. Now, one of my other videos, one of the ones I post on Facebook and Instagram, got a lot of grief over the quality of my knife. So what I'm going to do is use my backup cutting mechanism there, which is that trilobite. I keep that on the waistband of my rebreather, and you can see there that's sorted it. Cut the prusik. You can see the lazy shot has been released and is heading away at a rate of knots, so it probably indicates there's a reasonable amount of current. Skip forward another small bit, and the next item on the agenda is to accelerate my decompression. You can see there I'm changing the high set point to 1.5 on my Perdix. I've already done the same thing on my rebreather, so on the Inspiration, which is on my left arm there, and I'm just confirming they're both the same. And you'll have seen there that's chopped a healthy amount of decompression off, which is clearly welcome. Just looking up there, you can see all the other divers above me, giving them a nice friendly wave. Also shows how great the visibility is, and that's one of the kind of takeaways I had from this dive. Not only finding the bell, but how stunning the visibility was. Skip forward again. You can see here that I've reached the decompression station, 6 meters. There's a couple of divers on it. You can see there I've got my dive voke in my left hand there, and I'm using it to get a few photos just because the conditions were so good. And for those of you who've not used a dive voke, I love these things, not only for what I'm doing there, which is to take photos, but also because I use them to watch films on Deco stops, and it just makes it speed by, which is just as well, because as you can see from my Deco profile here, I've got nearly 3 hours to do. You can see I left the bottom there with about 150 odd minutes time to surface. Get up, that chops down to about just under 130 when I do my PO2 change up to 1.5, and then it's just a case of doing the time, doing the stops, and then right at the end, as I often do, I stay in the water a bit longer just to, as you know, it's a bit of a extra margin of safety for my wife and my kids. On a dive of this depth and duration, you're always going to get this happen, which is you're going to exceed your CNS limits. It's just one of those things, we all accept it, and I think the kind of science is gradually coming round to the view that this method of measuring the risk of oxygen toxicity is fundamentally flawed. But enough of that. Obviously, getting to the surface was a great moment, although of course the skipper also had to be paid his due. I know, of course, you want to know what the solution to the mystery is. What did the bell have on it? What was the name of the ship? And that is the really sad bit of the story, because the bell had no name. The ship was so cheaply made, they didn't even bother to put anything on there. So, unfortunately, the mystery still remains. So, didn't solve this wreck on this day, but there's a whole load on my channel where I have identified wrecks, many that have been missing for hundreds of years. Maybe you'll enjoy watching those. Or how about some of the other videos where I found incredible artefacts sitting at the bottom of the ocean? What I would say is, if there's any wreck detectives out there and you've seen something we've missed, something that might help identify this collier, then stick it in the comments. Otherwise, I'm Dom Robinson, Deep Wreck Diver. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.